Hey, what's up, guys? This is Jag Manget for Jaggy Sports. Happy winter solstice, December 21st. Let's get right into it. Health and safety protocols everywhere, including Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyrie Irving was set to come back and he got put in health and safety protocols. But my question to you guys, why did he come back? Take a look at a bunch of these clips and then let's reevaluate after these.
Woj, what can you tell us?
Greeny, ultimately, Joe Tsai, the Nets owner, Sean Marks, their GM, and the Nets organization, they made a decision. They want to win a championship. And this is certainly a change of course from when they sidelined Kyrie Irving when he wouldn't get vaccinated and did not want him as a part-time player. The Nets look at, listen, certainly where they are with COVID, 7 players out in protocols. Kevin Durant at 37 minutes a game, the most he's played since 2014 when he won the MVP. And a chance now to have Kyrie Irving to help bridge them to the postseason, ease the minutes load on their team, get them a number 1 seed, and then see where they are in the playoffs. But they know that they have ultimately a tight window to try to win a championship. They have James Harden, potentially could head into free agency next season, as can Kyrie Irving. And they see an opportunity here to win and ultimately decided that they're going to bring Kyrie Irving back. He will start ramping up with the Nets. He can practice at home. He cannot play road games against the Knicks or the Raptors. He can play everywhere else in the NBA.
The Nets are out of their freaking mind. Like, the idea that you're going to bring Kyrie Irving back to just play road games is just ludicrous to me. Now, I want to point out that in the history of the NBA, in the earliest days of the sport, this used to happen. There would be guys who would just play home games. Do you know why? It is because there was much more money to be made in other jobs. So, you know who Kiki Vandeweghe is?
Yes.
His father was Dr. Ernie Vandeweghe. He played for the Knicks, I think in the 40s or the 50s, and he only played home games because he was a doctor. And he did not want to travel all over the place playing these road games because in the NBA you made like $8 a game, and he was a doctor. It's 80 years ago. The NBA, you cannot do this. There's only one way this makes sense, and everyone I've asked, Woj, everyone tells me that's not the thinking, is the only way this makes sense is if they feel they have to showcase his ability to play in order to trade him. But you cannot have a player who's only going to play road games. This thing isn't getting better by the end of the season. There's no way in the world he's going to be playing home games in the playoffs. Can you imagine if they're in the freaking NBA Finals and he's only playing road games? And we were speculating on the air the other night on NBA Countdown, do they want to try and slot themselves into a series where they get more road games than home games in the playoffs because it's advantageous? Would you rather be like the 5 seed than the 1 seed? This is the conversation we're having. Someone needs to point out this cannot work. It cannot.
Kyrie now coming back, and the story coming out this weekend was like, the Nets have reevaluated this. They need bodies. They need help. They can't afford to be precious anymore. Conspiracy Bill, of course, is going in a completely different direction. I think they're looking at him, and I'm not reporting this, so don't aggregate it. I just think they're looking at him as an asset. They're trying to make their team better. They don't have enough to win the title. You can't trade him if he's not playing, right? Why else would you do a 180 on where you were two months ago? Makes no sense to me. There's 2 options here. One option is they know they can't trade him unless he's playing. The other option is Durant, which has been rumored, and who knows if this is true or not, but Durant really went to management and for the first time was like, hey, let the guy play. What are we doing here? This could affect whether I come back or not. So I think it's one of those 2. I personally think it is the Kyrie trade possibilities and the fact that you can't trade this guy if he's not playing. What do you think?
I think it's simply the fact that Kevin Durant is playing 37 minutes per game and he's coming off of a major injury. And they're like, we can't keep doing this. Steve Nash spoke about it last week, Bill. He said, he's been amazing. He wants to play every minute. He's producing in every minute. He's playing an MVP level, but we can't keep doing this. So,
I'm open to the league invoking its best interest of the game clause in mandating that everybody be vaccinated in some capacity. Now, I don't give a damn what you got to do, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, whether it's talking to Aaron Rodgers and finding out what being immunized is all about, whether it's something that Kyrie is exploring with the Canadian government, whatever complies or that ultimately stipulates that you are indeed vaccinated, I think that is something that should be mandated. This is a global health crisis. This is a pandemic. You know, your privacy, yeah, your medical history and all of that other stuff, that's private. That's true. But whether or not you have COVID-19 is not a private matter when you have the ability to be contaminated. I wasn't out partying. I wasn't acting up. I didn't sit up there and overexpose myself to anything. This stuff can happen to you just standing in front of somebody's face, for crying out loud. And to have to watch the Brooklyn Nets reverse course and take this position is one of the most shameful things I think they could have ever done. And I'll go a step further. One of the last people in the world who's worth it is Kyrie Irving. Now let me count the ways. Let me preface my comments by saying this. Kyrie Irving is a superstar. Kyrie Irving is box office. I would pay Kyrie Irving $50 million a year. He's worth it as a talent. I want to announce to the world today, I think that anybody who gives Kyrie Irving more than a one-year deal at a time are the stupidest people on the planet. He would never get another long-term deal from me because he can't be trusted. This man finds every excuse not to show up to work. This man finds every excuse under the sun not to play basketball unless he wants to. I'm not accusing him of not working hard. I'm not accusing him of being somebody that's not going out there, Tim Legler, and putting forth his due diligence to be in shape, to be ready. That's not what I'm accusing him of. I'm saying he believes people are beneath him. He believes he's the high road guy, that he looks down on people. It's his way. He wants to do things by his rules and regulations. He doesn't want to capitulate to anything. And he believes that anybody who does got something wrong with them instead of looking at himself. The Brooklyn Nets know this. And you would make this concession? I don't want to hear about bodies flying and as a result you're trying to win a championship. And so, you know what? We need Kyrie Irving. Well, suppose you playing against a team that plays in a city that has that mandate. Suppose that mandate is adopted by other cities. We can't rule out that possibility in the weeks and the months to come due to the Omicron and the Delta variant. We can't rule these things out. There's no telling what kind of stipulations or restrictions are going to be implemented in the days, weeks, and months to come that could potentially prohibit him from playing basketball. So at the end of the day, if you're the National Basketball Association, which I'm sure agrees with me, and you're the Brooklyn Nets in particular, to make this capitulation, to make this concession for him, who, by the way, was away from basketball for 10 months before coming back for 2 weeks last year, and then the riots at the U.S. Capitol took place, and he was traumatized and needed time away from basketball. Didn't get back the money, mind you. Didn't get back the money. Still expected to be paid. This is the Kyrie Irving that we're talking about. So for me, the fact that that they reversed course on this is egregious and disgusting, to be quite honest with you. But what makes it even more so that way is that they did it for him, because he's the last person in the world who deserves it. Not as a talent. As a talent, he deserves all of it. But as somebody who is trustworthy, hell no. He's the last person that you should make this kind of concession for. And the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion, were rude today. They made this decision.
Yeah, listen, Stephen A., you laid out the case perfectly about everything that Kyrie Irving represents and why they should make this decision for him. So I'm just to add to it a little bit. Here's where I have such a problem with it. When you compromise your principles and your integrity as an organization for what you are supposed to represent and what this is supposed to be about and what team sports are supposed to be about. Because to me, from the beginning, to think that you could allow a guy to just show up, play on the road, not practice with you, not play home games, not be a part of everything that goes into the blood and sweat and the emotional investment that has to go into winning, to allow a guy to escape that and just show up and give you his 20 to 25 or 30 on a given night on the road to help you win some games, to me, from the beginning, was insane. And then when they stepped up and said, listen, if you're not all in, we don't want you around, I saluted them, I applauded them. It sounded like they were doing it for the right reasons because they had some sort of integrity about making that decision. Like, we got to go forward with the guys that are going to be here every day, fully bought in. And I know from a coaching staff in particular, for Steve Nash, to think about having to incorporate a guy that's a ball-dominant scorer, as elite as he is, and then you get him one night, and then now you got to go play a couple games without him when you just try to figure out how to incorporate him in the first place. I knew Steve Nash didn't want any part of that. I think that played a big part into why they shut it down in the beginning. So to now just reverse course because you've hit some circumstances with a number of guys in health and safety protocols, because Kevin Durant is playing a lot of minutes right now, and you're worried about the drain on him, to reverse course on that and compromise everything that team sports are about in terms of everybody being in the same direction and pulling in the same direction, to me, it's really grotesque that you would do it now, just because you find yourself in some difficult circumstances with regard to your roster. So I completely agree with you. It's really disappointing that Sean Marks, Steve Nash, and the organization would now reverse course when really nothing has changed with regard to Kyrie Irving. Their circumstances have changed, so now their principles have changed as well.
So let's just put it out there. Stephen A. hates Kyrie Irving because he's calling him selfish. He says unmitigated disaster if you sign him for a long-term contract, which I think is true. He hasn't played that many games before COVID for the Nets to give him a contract extension. So the question is, why did they bring him back? Now, because Kevin Durant wants him to play, because he needs him to handle the minutes, most of the minutes kind of thing, because Kevin Durant, remember, he's coming off an Achilles tear, and this is like 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago. He's coming off an Achilles tear, so he needs someone to, run the ship and whatnot kind of thing, while Harden also comes back. So we'll see what happens on that note. But another thing is, you guys got to take a look at this. They brought him back because they want to up his trade value to trade him before February 10th. Now, I think that's conspiracy, whatnot kind of thing. I agree with Bill Simmons. But think about it. Bill Simmons does make a lot of sense here, because Bill Simmons says, basically, why would the Nets pull a 180 from a couple months ago and just bring him back? You know what I mean? Something's up, because they're number one in the Eastern Conference, and I think they're number 3rd overall, behind the Suns, behind the Golden State Warriors. So you don't really need him back unless you pretty much want to trade him. Because think about it this way. James Harden has a player option, and he's set to become a free agent because he didn't sign that contract extension, which is fine, but he wants to test out the waters. That's another topic for another discussion, because I believe that once he hits the free agency period, Daryl Morey will contact him and be on him like peanut butter and jam. And another thing is, Kyrie Irving is set to become a UFA if he declines his player option. Now, his player option is worth like $36 million for the next season. I believe James Harden's going to opt out of his. So they can't really force Kyrie Irving to opt out of his player option. What they want to do is they want to trade him, up his value, then trade him, because at the end of the day, they're not going to sign this guy for a contract extension at all. And basically what that means is you're going to trade him to a partner where he can, to a team where he can actually play road games and home games. Currently, he cannot play in Toronto and the New York Knicks, and that doesn't matter because they're not making the playoffs anytime soon. So the most logical place to trade him would be either Houston, Dallas, or long shot San Antonio Spurs, which that's not never gonna happen. So it's either Houston or Dallas, and I think Dallas might take the bait, just because of the fact that they need another ball handler besides Luka. Now, is that gonna happen? I have no idea, but it just makes perfect sense because the Nets owner, I forget his name, Joe something, he is totally pro-vaccine, and I know they want to win a chip. That makes sense, but you have to also think to yourself, if they keep him after the trade deadline, and he chooses to opt into his player option, then you got to deal with him and the luxury tax and the money and whatnot for another season. Let's just say if he doesn't play again. Let's just say if he declines to, sit out again, and then the whole this happens again where this whole drama and whatnot. So basically, Kyrie Irving, I think, will get traded before February 10th. This is Jag Mangat, Jaggy Sports. It is December 21st, 2021. Happy winter solstice.